It all started when Emily, a successful professional in her early 30s, found herself in a whirlwind of stress and dissatisfaction. Her marriage to John, a kind, dependable man who worked as a teacher, had been comfortable but lacked excitement. Over time, their connection faded into routine, and Emily began seeking solace in the attention of someone new, Adam, a charming colleague who filled the emotional gaps she had long ignored. The affair began innocently, with late-night conversations and harmless flirtation, but it quickly escalated. Emily found herself drawn to Adam's unpredictability, his passion for life, and the thrill of secrecy. She convinced herself that it was just a momentary lapse, that her love for John would always remain. But with every stolen moment, the guilt mounted, and the lines between right and wrong blurred. Then came the night when John, sensing a shift in Emily's behavior, confronted her. The truth came crashing down. Emily confessed, her voice trembling, as she explained how she had allowed herself to fall into an affair. John, crushed and silent, barely recognized the woman standing before him. The trust they had built over years was shattered, and the foundation of their relationship seemed irreparably broken. John's response was not one of anger or revenge, but of quiet rejection. He walked away, not in a dramatic exit, but with a somber resolve. "I can't look at you the same way anymore," he said. "I need time, space. I don't know if I can forgive you." For weeks, Emily tried to reach out, desperate to make amends, but John remained distant, his emotional walls rising higher with each attempt. Her regret grew with every passing day. She had lost the love of a man who had been nothing but loyal, supportive, and loving. What she had once taken for granted, she now realized she had forfeited in the pursuit of fleeting excitement. As time went on, Emily found herself at a crossroads. The affair had ended, but the wreckage remained. John, though hurt, focused on healing in his own way. He began taking long walks, reconnecting with old friends, and pursuing hobbies he had abandoned in their marriage. His growth, though quiet, was evident. He found strength in solitude, and the more he distanced himself from Emily, the clearer it became that he had always been capable of happiness without her. Meanwhile, Emily began to understand the depth of her mistake. She realized that her actions had not just betrayed John, but also herself. The emotional escape she had sought from the affair only led her to a deeper sense of emptiness. She found herself reflecting on the love she had once shared with John, the shared dreams, the quiet moments of joy, and the trust that had been broken beyond repair. Months passed, and Emily's regret became a silent companion. She knew she could never undo the hurt, but she could become a better version of herself. She worked through her guilt, seeking therapy, and focusing on her own growth. Still, the one thing she could never do was erase the pain she had caused. Then, one crisp autumn day, after many months of separation, Emily and John crossed paths at a mutual friends' gathering. The air between them was thick with unspoken history, but something had shifted. John no longer wore the pain on his sleeve. He had moved forward, not because of her, but for himself. His calm, steady presence was a stark contrast to the turmoil Emily had once known. Their conversation was brief, but genuine. "I've learned a lot from this," John said, his eyes meeting hers with a quiet sincerity. "I've healed in my own way. I've found peace." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry. I wish I could go back and undo everything." John gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "We can't change the past, Emily. But I'm okay now. I'm finally at peace." As they parted ways, Emily felt a strange sense of closure. She realized that the closure she had been seeking from John had been within her all along. She had to forgive herself, acknowledge her growth, and accept that some wounds could never fully heal, but that didn't mean they couldn't transform into something meaningful. It wasn't the reconciliation she had hoped for, but in a way, it was more than that. It was the acknowledgement of their individual journeys, the heartbreak that had led them to personal growth, and the unexpected understanding that sometimes closure comes not from the past being fixed, but from the acceptance of what had been and what was yet to come. Months went by, and life continued its unpredictable course. Emily's journey of self-reflection, though painful, began to reshape her into someone stronger and more self-aware. She threw herself into her work and personal growth, spending hours reading books on relationships, forgiveness, and the human capacity to heal. Therapy sessions became a staple in her routine, each one unraveling layers of her insecurities and misguided choices. Slowly, she began to understand why she had cheated, why she had sought validation outside her marriage, and why she had been so afraid to confront the deepening dissatisfaction within herself long before it reached the breaking point. For John, time had been his greatest healer. The emptiness that had consumed him in the wake of Emily's betrayal had gradually turned into something else, an understanding of his own worth. He threw himself into teaching, finding joy in helping his students grow, and reconnected with old friends he had drifted away from during the years of marriage. He traveled more, met new people, and discovered the person he was when he wasn't tethered to a broken relationship. There were moments when Emily's name would cross his mind, but he no longer felt the sharp sting of pain that once accompanied it. Instead, there was an acceptance, as if the weight of the past had finally lifted. Emily occasionally checked her phone, half hoping that John might reach out, but the silence remained. She knew it was her fault that things had ended this way. She would never expect him to forgive her or even offer a second chance. The most she could hope for was for him to find his happiness, just as she was trying to find hers. One day, a text from John popped up on her phone, and her heart skipped a beat. It was brief, no long-winded explanations, just a single sentence. Asterisk, I hope you're well. Asterisk. It took her a few moments to compose herself before replying. She wanted to sound confident, composed, but most of all, sincere. She typed, Asterisk, I'm doing better. I've been working on myself. Thank you for checking in. Asterisk. The message exchange that followed was respectful, even warm, but there were no false promises or hope for reconciliation. John had found his peace, and Emily was still on her journey. They were two different people now, and while they shared a history, they no longer shared a future. As the years passed, their paths never crossed again, except for the occasional glance at mutual friends' social media posts. Emily's life took its own shape, shaped by lessons learned the hard way. She never stopped regretting the pain she caused John, but she also learned that growth often comes with scars. Those scars, she realized, were not to be hidden or erased, but embraced for what they had taught her. John, on the other hand, eventually met someone new. It wasn't a love that blossomed out of the ashes of their marriage, but something entirely fresh, an opportunity to build a relationship on trust and mutual respect, free from the baggage of the past. Emily heard about it through a mutual friend, and for a brief moment, she felt a pang of sadness. Not because she wanted him back, but because she wished she could have been the woman he deserved. But then she remembered what she had learned. Forgiveness doesn't always come with reconciliation. Sometimes, it comes in the form of letting go and allowing both people to grow in their own separate lives. And as much as it hurt, Emily realized that their story had ended for a reason. It was no longer about holding on to what could have been, but accepting what had been and making peace with it. A few years later, Emily found herself in a different relationship, one built on honesty, communication, and mutual respect. It wasn't perfect, but it was healthy, and she knew she was capable of being a better partner because she had learned from her past mistakes. As for John, he had found the love he had been longing for. His new relationship was built on the foundation of everything Emily had failed to give him: understanding, trust, and unwavering commitment. He had come to a place where he no longer carried the weight of the past, where he had let go of the anger, the pain, and the regrets. Their story had ended, but in its wake, both had learned to grow and move forward. And in that quiet, unspoken way, they both understood that sometimes life's most painful experiences lead to the most unexpected forms of closure, a chance to rebuild from the broken pieces, to start anew, and to find peace, even in the wake of heartbreak. Years had passed since Emily and John's final encounter, and both had found their own forms of peace, though the echoes of their shared past remained part of who they were. For Emily, healing wasn't a linear journey, but each day brought her closer to the woman she wanted to be, a woman who had made mistakes but was no longer defined by them. In her new relationship, she had learned to trust again, not only others but herself. She no longer carried the weight of guilt as a constant companion. Instead, she carried the lessons from her past, woven into the fabric of her present. One evening, as she sat with her partner at their favorite cafe, reflecting on the path she'd walked, she thought about John. Not with longing, but with gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons he had taught her. Lessons about honesty, communication, and love. And while they had not worked out as a couple, John had been an integral part of her transformation. Her phone buzzed, breaking her reverie. It was a message from a mutual friend. Asterisk, John's getting married next month. Asterisk. Emily felt a surge of emotion that she hadn't anticipated. It wasn't jealousy or bitterness. Rather, it was a mix of sadness and happiness. She felt a deep sense of closure. John, the man who had once been the center of her world, was moving forward with someone else, someone who would give him the love and commitment she had failed to offer. And that was exactly what he deserved. She took a deep breath and smiled softly. The hurt was no longer there, just an acknowledgement that they had both grown and moved on. She knew this moment was the final piece of closure she had needed. There would be no more wondering, no more what-ifs. At the wedding, which she attended as a guest of that same mutual friend, Emily saw John from a distance, his face beaming with joy as he exchanged vows with his new bride. He was different, more at peace, more content. He looked like the man she had once loved but had to let go of for his own sake. And as they made eye contact across the room, there was no animosity, no bitterness. Just a quiet understanding between two people who had once shared a life but now shared nothing more than a memory. Later that night, when John approached her to exchange pleasantries, it was with a warmth that surprised her. There were no harsh words, no awkwardness. Just a sincere conversation between two people who had both weathered the storm of their past. "You look happy," Emily said, smiling genuinely. "I am," John replied. "And I'm glad you are too. I think we both needed to find our own way to happiness." Emily nodded, her heart swelling with a quiet sense of peace. "I'm sorry for everything I did. You didn't deserve any of it." John's smile softened. "I've forgiven you, Emily. I think we both needed time to heal and grow. No hard feelings. I hope you're doing well." She nodded, her voice steady. "I am. I'm really doing well." As they parted ways, Emily walked away with no lingering sadness, no unresolved anger. The truth had settled in her heart. Some relationships were meant to teach us, not to last forever. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for someone is to let them go. John's wedding marked the final chapter of their shared story, but it also represented the beginning of a new one for Emily. She had no illusions that everything in her life was perfect, but she had finally come to terms with her past. Her growth wasn't just about the mistakes she'd made, but also about understanding that healing required time, and sometimes closure didn't come from external apologies or resolutions. It came from within. As the years continued to unfold, Emily learned to embrace the impermanence of life and love. Her relationship with her partner deepened, built on the lessons she had learned from her past. She wasn't perfect, and neither was he, but they understood that love, at its best, was an evolving journey, a process of growth, understanding, and sometimes forgiveness. Meanwhile, John and his wife built their life together, creating their own love story, one free from the shadows of the past. He had found a new sense of purpose, not just in his marriage, but in his life overall. The heartbreak, once so consuming, had become a distant memory, replaced by the joy of new beginnings. As for Emily and John, their paths never truly crossed again, but the impact they had on each other's lives would never be erased. They were both better versions of themselves because of the love and loss they had shared. Their story, though painful, had given birth to something beautiful: growth, forgiveness, and the quiet understanding that sometimes the heart needs to break to truly heal. And as they each moved forward in their separate lives, they did so with the knowledge that love, in its many forms, is not always about holding on. Sometimes it's about letting go of the past, of regret, and ultimately of each other. And in that letting go, they both found the unexpected closure they had long been seeking.